Throughout the world, people of faith are the first responders to the suffering of their neighbors. They are faithful servants, ministering to people who bear the ills of our times. It begins at the grassroots level, in the village or the small town. A spirit rises, unites faith with deed, and the world changes. And we bear witness to a force of light that renews hope to the despairing.
The Philippines is primarily an agricultural country. Nearly 40% of the labor force live in rural areas and support themselves through agriculture.
This is luya, ginger.
It is unique in that it is the only predominantly Christian country in Asia.
That's why part of our development as pastors, we have to do this. And part of our subject is geotheology. We appreciate God's grace through these lands and through these plants. This is alugbati, kamoting kahoy, and this is beans.
Seminaries place a high priority on studying environmental justice and practicing the farming of useful plants for consumption and medicinal purposes.
These are the young ones that we have just planted.
It's known as geotheology.
Geotheology is about our responsibility to creation, our responsibility to make the land become productive for people so that the produce of the land may sustain life of the community.
It's a part of the calling as a steward of God's creation. And it is because the environment, the land is the source of life. So we have to uplift anything that has anything to do with the sanctity of life.
The capacity of creation to sustain life must always be there. And this capacity to sustain life must not be destroyed by human beings.
Philippines are rich in nature, in land. Everything you plant in Philippines, it grow up, it bear fruits. It is one way to alleviate poverty. We need to plant so that we have food in our families.
It's kind of a ginger that we usually cook it with this lemongrass as an alternative for coffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plants, land is part of the creations.
Yes.
This is the expression of God's love, especially in us as Filipinos. Yes. Lands are very important. Papaya.
7 out of 10 farmers do not own the land they till, so they are landless farmers.
It's estimated that about 40 million people live below the poverty level in the Philippines. And farmers make up a majority of that number.
And they are at the mercy of the big landowners, especially in exacting from them the land rent, usury, high prices of agricultural inputs like fertilizers, pesticides. They only receive a daily allowance or salary of less than 100 pesos, and that is only around more or less $2 a day. They cannot afford to send their children to school. They do not have any medical and hospitalization. They can't afford it.
Organic.
They are really oppressed, they are exploited, and they live in extreme poverty and hunger.
This is one of the reasons Pascua and community organizers take geotheology a step further toward activism.
The land also is their base for their political power. And so if they own the land that they till, they can also meaningfully participate in the exercise of political power in the community. In this way, we believe that the vital step to the reduction of poverty is the distribution of land to the farmers who do not own the land. People are not healthy because they're not eating enough. And they're not eating enough because their produce actually is taken away from them. Even if they are the rightful owners of the produce, because of the unequal rights between the landlords and the tenants. It is always the landlord who takes the bigger share and leaves a very small share to the tenant who produced the food.
Gardens, both by group and by individual.
Yeah.
The economics of sustainable agriculture isn't the only issue that requires organizing.
The context in the Philippines is more on opposing big corporations that exploits our natural resources.
The country's natural elements, as well as its geographic location, can be devastating to its population.
And our work with the people in disaster situation is based on the situation that the Philippines is a disaster-prone country. It is located in the typhoon belt. An average of 25 typhoons hit the country every year, and at least 6 of them are disastrous. Earthquakes occur almost every day. There are around 200 volcanoes in the Philippines, and 20 of them are active. And the most recent one is Mayon volcano, Taal volcano, and the Mount Pinatubo, which has claimed many lives and destroyed many properties.
The National Council of Churches Disaster Response Program responds to communities that are hit by both natural and human-created disasters.
By human-made disasters, we mean disasters brought about by development aggression, like, for example, operations of mining companies that wherein there are mining accidents that displaces many people. There are also communities displaced by armed conflict, by the between the ongoing armed conflict between the government and the armed groups in the Philippines. So we have these internally displaced people. We have programs on education and training, which we provide to our church people and ecumenical partners, as well as vulnerable communities, to better prepare them for disasters. We assist them in organizing their disaster response committees or their disaster response programs, especially for the churches. And we developed the community-based disaster plan.
The Philippines is among the top 10 nations in the world experiencing climate crisis.
As long as they are the people who have the least capacity to recover from the devastation, they are our target beneficiaries of our programs.
In addition to the relief and emergency response work, the National Council of Churches advocates for policy reforms. The goal is to empower people economically so that they can better prepare for disasters.
We need to couple our relief work with advocacy work. Advocacy work of continuing preservation of our environment. Because as you well know, climate change is now a major concern in the world, and I think it has really affected the Philippines. For the previous years, most of the typhoons were coupled with mudslides, landslides, and this can be attributed to the worsening weather conditions, the continuing degradation of our environment, which has really added to the vulnerability of the people.
In 2008, the Fraser Institute ranked the Philippines to be one of the 5 most mineral-rich countries in the world, estimating the nation's wealth to be at $1 trillion. Throughout the years, the government of the Philippines' ambition to become a world leader in mineral production has had a negative impact on both its population and its land. The mining industry has caused massive displacement of indigenous peoples and the militarization of their ancestral domain. The Ecumenical Council for Corporate Responsibility issued a report in 2009. It stated that mining causes large-scale ruin of the island's environments and livelihoods, and it particularly undermines food production and sustainability.
For instance, in the Mountain Province, Lepanto Mines, which is a U.S. corporation, dumps their mine tailings into the river, poisoning the whole river system. Some Australian corporations are also doing some surface mining, and they're destroying the river systems, the ecological systems.
In some cases, the conflict has become deadly. Dome An is a young widow who has lived underground ever since her husband Pepe, the son of a farmer, was murdered. He grew up in a community where he saw families enjoy the full harvest from their farms.
His dream was to see an empowered community. For example, farmers' community where the farmers get to enjoy the fullness of their harvest. The farmers get to send their children to school, meet their needs, So for Pepe, his passion was to help make that kind of community come to reality.
Dome An and Pepe became activists during the course of community-based development work.
He embraced this mission of trying to bring forth a community where he could once more enjoy that kind of abundance and peace. At the same time, be able to contribute to a society where his own children would also enjoy that kind of environment. It was a very personal sense of what is good, what brings happiness to him, and a very personal sense of what is just also.
The young couple became involved in protesting the Philippine Mining Act of 1995. It allows for foreign mining companies to operate in the country.
We study this law. We network with those who also study this. Of course, we found it threatening. We found it counter to what we consider sacred. The sacredness of land, of life, of community, especially the indigenous peoples where I belong with. We conduct education, we conduct reflection sessions within the community, we coordinate activities for the communities and for the people to discuss about this law and to evaluate its impact to the community.
They became known for organizing protests and speaking out against the Unjust Mining Act.
Yeah, we lobby to various government institutions, to various church institutions, and to individuals. We organize rallies, we organize people to mobilize or to come together and express their sentiments in various venues, be it creative, be it formal hearings, or be it legislative, be it lobby work.
The couple helped draft a document to articulate the sentiments of their communities, and they facilitated channels to use this document to impact the U.S. Congress.
The day I was supposed to arrive from Hong Kong, where I was supposed to meet Pepe, he was on his way to Manila to talk with a fellow church worker who happens to be with the United Methodist Church also. They were going to arrange this meeting with representatives from the United Methodist Church coming from the United States. Unfortunately, he was killed before he met this fellow church worker.
A man on a motorcycle, wearing dark clothes and a helmet, shot and stabbed Pepe as he was walking. Sadly, this is not uncommon in the Philippines. It's suspected that his murder was an extrajudicial killing, the killing of a person by governmental authorities without the sanction of any judicial proceeding or legal process. It's an issue that many religious organizations are addressing. It's been 3 years since Domon's husband, Pepe, was murdered. Today, she continues to heal from the trauma, living underground, protecting her safety.
What I've resolved to do is to try to understand war, the pains, the struggles that people go through as I go through it as well. I've been trying to understand the art of war in order to understand the art of peace.
Detroit, Michigan. It's a city built by immigrants. It's the heart of the American automobile industry and the home of Motown music. There was a time when it was America's fourth largest city, an epicenter for global trade and commerce, labor unions, and the blue-collar middle class. Today, the city is in crisis after years of devastating economic decline. Since 2000, 48% of the manufacturing jobs in Michigan were lost to other countries. The unemployment rate is more than 18%. About 60% of Detroit's children live in poverty. It competes for the highest murder rate in the nation and has one of the highest rates of unhoused for individuals and families.
This city has gone through a Category 5 storm, and it's been brewing for years.
Ordinary citizens are now battling for the survival of their community and the well-being of their neighbors.
We're cut from the same cloth. We'll rebuild. No one tells us we can't rebuild. No one.
On this day, the community is celebrating the groundbreaking for the renovation of a 34,500 square foot building.
Just call on me, brother, if you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me.
As part of the Cass Community Social Services, the building will be upgraded to 41 apartments, providing housing for unhoused adults with special needs. It's a $10 million development that has required multiple partners and collaborative relationships.
You want to help out, this is how you do it.
Reverend Faith Fowler is the visionary behind the development. She's the executive director for Cass Community Social Services and pastor for Cass Community United Methodist Church.
What seemed impossible all of a sudden was doable, achievable, accomplishable. It was amazing what happened on that beach.
But this is just the latest development in a 6-building campus. The CCSS campus provides housing programs, education and vocational training, food and health services.
Much of what Cass started doing and continues doing would be considered charity. It's feeding you, it's clothing you, it's sheltering you, it's giving you clothing, and that's good, and we don't have any intention of stopping it. But we're also now working very diligently at larger solutions to the things that lead to hunger and homelessness and domestic violence and people living with AIDS, so that we're into permanent housing and not just an emergency shelter.
There are 2 transitional housing programs that are provided specifically for women.
Mom's Place 1 is for women with dependents. Mom's Place 2 is for women without dependents, whether they have no children, if their children might be grown, or their children could be in the foster care system and they're working towards getting them back. So oftentimes I've had women come over to Mom's Place 2 work towards getting their family back, show that they have stable housing because of the transitional housing facility, get their children back, and then transition over to Mom's Place 1, where then they work with their families towards permanent housing.
Once in the CCSS system, a holistic approach with a continuum of care is provided.
From day one, they come in and we set person-centered planning, which is goals that they identify that they want to work on over the 2 years that they're here. Some of it oftentimes might be housing, obtaining their own house, their own apartment, or finding an income, or getting their GED, or going to college. We have a lot of women here who are in college and then are looking for employment so that they can get the income to sustain their housing. And I feel that the person-centered plan is such a big component, setting down the groundwork, staying focused on what they want to work on, and having the support of us and my staff to work on that. And then that gets them exactly where they want to be.
Linda McNeil is a businesswoman and cosmetologist. She owns her own hair salon and lending company for other salons. She employs several people and has served as a member of the CCSS board for several years. She was also living on the street for 10 years and addicted to heroin.
Sometimes I don't think it's real. It's still like a dream some days. It was a long process of homelessness, without shelter, without food, not knowing where you're going to take a shower or clean up, businesses not allowing you to come in. You can't apply for a job because you don't have an address, you don't have a phone, you don't have clean clothes.
Linda used the services provided by the Cass Community United Methodist Church. It was here where she could find a hot meal and warm clothes.
I always saw a glimmer in the people that volunteered and helped me in that church. And I used to say to myself, one of these days, if I ever get my life together, I'm going to come back here and go to church. And that's exactly what happened.
Linda's recovery and transformation began with a prayer.
Eventually, I just had enough. And I went and sat on the corner of 3rd and Willis, and it was winter time during the holidays, and I was sitting there with a wino, and he asked me if I wanted to drink some Sterno. I was so sick, I needed heroin, I needed drugs, I didn't want wine or Sterno, but I did consider drinking. And I just said, Ralph, I know everybody calls you God, but I'm not worthy, so okay, Ralph, if you ever aren't busy taking care of everybody else and you have just a little second one day, maybe, you can just get this monkey off my back. I don't need a house with a white picket fence. I don't need anything. I just need this monkey off my back. So I know you're a really busy guy up there, but if you ever have a chance to kind of talk to a beggar like me, I'd appreciate it. And I don't know what signs to look for, but I'm here in case you can ever help me.
Linda kicked her addiction, reconnected with her family, sought medical treatment, and finished school.
After I had some time of sobriety under my belt and I felt comfortable, I stopped. I loaded my van up and I came down with a load of clothes because I wanted to give back and maybe give somebody else that little faith of that mustard seed. Went into the church and actually Reverend Fowler was preaching. And I looked around and just the smell of the church, the environment of the church, I sat down, listened to her and just bawled my eyes out. I felt like I was home, but without the addiction. The miracle happened to me.
The miracle is happening to many other people thanks to the efforts of Reverend Fowler and Cass Community Social Services. One of its most innovative programs is Green Industries.
We do many green projects which trains and employs the members of the community, members who participate in our other programs.
Green Industries jobs reclaim discarded materials and eliminate blight while providing work. Mud Mat Production is a program that trains and employs men to pick up illegally dumped tires and converts the rubber into mud mats. More than 20,000 tires from the streets of Detroit have been picked up and repurposed. Another self-sustaining business is document destruction.
We have our shredding industry, which we employ individuals from the day program, the activity center. We employ them and they shred documents. We have partnerships with lawyers and other businesses that require their documents to be shredded. And then we bring them in, we shred them, and then we take them out to be recycled.
50 people are employed in the program, and they can shred 1 ton of paper every hour. Micro Enterprises is a program that helps people with developmental disabilities start their own businesses.
The notion of Cass as a campus is really a simple thing. It's not rocket science. It's when you look at who's providing what. One organization is providing great housing, it's over here. One organization is providing great job training, it's over here. Somebody else is providing food, it's over here. And none of the homeless have cars. So they have to take the bus. In the last 2 years, while Detroit has struggled financially, bus routes have been eliminated, bus days have been eliminated. So it occurred to me, since the area that Scott is in had all that vacant property and potential buildings, that we could build a campus. Within a mile from Scott, we have 400 vacant lots and 300 abandoned buildings, within a mile. So you have to see that as potential or opportunity and not just as a bad thing. So we started putting these buildings together. So now, okay, let's say I move into Brady. I can walk to the warehouse, it's 2 blocks. I can work there. I can walk to the warehouse, it's 2 blocks. I can worship there. I can walk to Scott, it's 3 blocks. I can take classes there. If it's the end of the month and I've run out of money and run out of food, I can walk to Scott and have meals there. I can come and participate in social programming there. I can walk to Scott. We have a very small store. If I need, bread or milk or deodorant there. So now my quality of life is improved significantly.
Sometimes talked about, but I'm going home.
The quality of life for Minnie is improved significantly due to the efforts of Faith and her team. She attributes their motivation to the Bible.
It doesn't matter where you go in the Bible, there's going to be instruction to look out for the least and the last and the lost, and to do it in such a way that you see Jesus Christ himself in that person, that you're not creating a situation of dependency or that robs somebody of their dignity, but out of the joy of knowing the grace of God.
Knowing where to start and what to develop to support the needs of people is the first hurdle.
Because far too often we set up another soup kitchen that isn't needed, but something else is needed. So if we know what's truly needed, if we do a needs assessment, asking the people and not asking the people who want to provide whatever they want to provide, they'll tell you. Just walking from the groundbreaking yesterday, somebody came up to me and said, well, when are you going to have housing for families? Because everybody's blah, blah, blah. I said, that'll be next. Thank you for telling me. So finding out what people really need and then working to provide it. Trying very desperately not to replicate or duplicate what's already out there. Because if somebody else is doing it, let them do it. Help them do it, right? Fill in the gap. That's what we do with people with AIDS. That's what we did with the mentally ill who are homeless. That's what we try and do. There's so much to do. Do what's not being done that's needed.
The Cass Church has a long tradition of mission. The first soup kitchen was established during the Great Depression to feed the hungry. The soup kitchen has never stopped. Cass currently serves over 1 million meals annually. In the 1970s and 80s, Cass responded to the large numbers of unhoused people who required daytime services, as well as those who could not access shelter at night.
probably my first vivid recollection was the pastor in my growing up years was Lou Redmond. He served here for 28 years before he graduated seminary until the day he retired. And his son, Robert, was in the community settling a dispute when he was shot to death, 20-some years old. And I can remember my parents at the dining room table talking about what it costs to be a minister or to be in ministry. And I've never forgotten that conversation, although they weren't talking to me. Because they phrased it in such a way that they had great honor and respect for this man and his family who are obviously grieving, and that that's the way it is sometimes to do God's work. So they weren't saying don't do it, just count the costs.
In the 18 years since Faith Fowler has been at Cass, the programs have grown exponentially. In 2002, Cass Community Social Services was established as a separate nonprofit to accommodate the church's expansion goals. Since then, the Cass campus has emerged. The main challenge to building programs, according to Faith, is not money.
You know, most days people in my position would tell you it's money. It's not. The greatest challenge is getting people to believe what's possible so that they'll throw their whole selves into it. If you really believed you could change education, you could change transportation, if you could change the justice system and how we incarcerate people here, if you really believed we could change, housing so there's affordable housing for, you'd do it. So that's the greatest challenge, I think. Getting people to commit, and if they believe it, I think they'll do it.
Perhaps Reverend Fowler's greatest asset is that she sincerely cares for those around her.
Rev's kind of a person that doesn't like her horn to be tooted. She doesn't like to be in the limelight. She doesn't like to be praised for all her hard work. But her visions and the motivation, she is such a real person. She's the type of person that anybody can go to and talk to. I don't care if you're homeless or, if you've got multiple doctorates degree. She has time for everyone.
For the West African country of Liberia, the long-term effects of war continue to cripple the nation, especially for the most vulnerable of its population.
Liberia has still today about 80% unemployment is the official UN and World Bank statistic. Very high illiteracy rates, education system that's been underfunded and really suffering for quite some time. And a healthcare system that is still shattered. So an infrastructure in disrepair after 26 years of war. And what we have is an economy that's still now, 10 years after the war, in crisis. So what you see is with 80% unemployment, it is often women and young people that are pushed to the margins, that are rendered invisible. It is those long-term impacts of war that end up stripping away opportunities, particularly for women and young girls. It's opportunities for education. Education beyond a certain level is not free. And even though the costs may seem low from the perspective of someone in the U.S., it is incredibly difficult for people to meet those costs. And without educational opportunity, the opportunities for employment are even more limited. So you have women that are selling secondhand clothing and other wares in an informal economy to be able to survive. And you do have women who are selling their bodies in order to survive. In spite of the tremendous risks, sexual violence, of HIV/AIDS, it's the only way that they're able to survive themselves and put food on the table to feed their children.
mother is a poor woman. My father is dead. The only way I can do my living is that I come on the street. The only way, because I don't have nobody to help me.
So how did you know how to start going onto the street?
Somebody come to me, I'm going in the club, I'm dance, men come to me, so now I'm passing on the street, car start for me, I get inside. I'm walking around, men call me, but I don't go to men. They always call me.
How much do they pay you?
They ask me, they say, how much money should I give you to have some time with you? So now I charge them 20, 25.
US dollars?
Yes.
Are you in
Yeah,
school?
No, I'm not in school.
What class did you start?
When my father was living, I stopped in the 7th grade.
In the 7th grade?
Yeah.
7th grade? How do they think you earn money?
But I'm lied to them.
You lied to them?
Yeah. While my father was alive, he used to support us, send us to school. I'm there to tell her on the street because when she hear it, she can feel bad. So when she asked me, I can lie to her, I say, oh, I go help people to sell, or I'm working. The only way she will feel fine. But I can't tell her on the street. And for me, I want to go back to school.
What would you like to go back to school to study?
I want to become a doctor.
A doctor?
Yeah. I want to become a doctor. That's why I like from the day I was small. I used to see the doctor name passing. I say, oh, the day when I get big, I will become doctor. But I don't have the hand. My father is dead. I don't feel happy because when my father was alive, and he used to take care of me. He used to do everything for me when I was in the 7th grade. He died. So if I come on the street, some men they treat us bad. I don't feel happy, but I don't have nobody to help me, so I'm forced to go on the street. I love my daughter because my first born, God gave me twins. I born 2 girls.
Oh, 2 guys?
Twins. Yeah, twins.
Twins?
2 girls.
So where are they? Wow, you have twins. Are they with their mother?
Yeah, they were my mother. I born twins.
What are your daughters like? What do they like to do?
Oh, when they see me, they can feel happy. Anytime they see me, and I like them too. So I feel bad when I come on the street because I'm on the street and God gave me 2 children at the same time. So I feel
So what
bad.
is your wish for them?
I can be praying for them to not be like me. Now I always tell my mother, the way I don't have them to go to school, my mission will send them to school for them to learn.
I think there's a lot that people can do. Write letters, understand the power in writing letters. Also use opportunities to impact the media, meet with and send letters to local newspapers, encourage them to cover international issues, to understand the role of the U.S. in the world and how U.S. leadership can be, through people power, encouraged to be on the right side of history. Do we spend taxpayer dollars on more wars? Is that how congregants want their resources to flow? Or do we instead make demands that taxpayer resources go towards building a better world, a more stable world, a more just world? I think there is tremendous power as consumers to place demands on corporations to be good global players. That corporations do the right thing, to not just extract resources, but to report on contracts, to be open in their accounting and not try to evade taxes into tax havens or to avoid taxes. It is really stripping away resources needed for development. Those domestic resources in countries like Liberia can only happen if corporations allow the proper fees and taxes to be paid on the resources that they're extracting from Africa. The more we stand together, understand that the power is in numbers across borders, that we are one human family, What happens that impacts and brings injustice to one is an injustice to all, and we have to stand together for values of justice and of human dignity in this 21st century, whatever way we can.
I volunteered to serve in the United States Navy as a student because I felt I had an obligation to my country and to those things that I felt were very important. So I went into naval training. I went into naval intelligence, ultimately. I became an intelligence briefer for Admiral Arleigh Burke, who was Chief of Naval Operations, who had the full responsibility of sending ships back and forth around the world or engaging in combat in the Lebanese Straits crisis or Taiwan in those days. I was at his side, watching a man who had to exercise authority at the highest levels. That was both instructive but challenging to my faith. What would I do in similar circumstances? And that always has been the question that I've raised when we come now to this national forum, the United States Senate, and decide on questions of war and peace. Now, better still to decide how better to negotiate with the enemy. Can you reach a settlement that is realistic without getting into armed forces, even if you have the armed forces behind you? Can you think through in the life of the country that you're dealing with how changes could come if there were more food and clothes and opportunities for young people and lots of other things for that? Is there a formula out there? And usually there is. If it's pursued, it may take more time and patience and money, and sometimes people get impatient and they want solutions now. But that's a part of the moral dilemma that I think comes from our faith. If we were not sensitive because of the faith and the creed, these might not be difficult decisions. Now, ultimately, they might come back to haunt us in ways that would be devastating, as our consciences then are filled with why in the world did I do that then and now? And maybe we do that in any event on things that are less consequential. I'm challenged frequently because the controversies that we are debating in the Senate have enormous consequences, not just for Americans, but for people around the world. If we are discussing, should we develop a new weapon system, invest billions of dollars in items that, if they are ever used, are going to kill tens of thousands of people or more, justified by the fact that other nations may have similar systems, and if so, we want ours to be the best, or we want ours to intimidate those who might want to transgress upon us. Now, these get into very difficult moral equations. You can say, as a Methodist, I think I will go back and pray for a while and see, what I find. But even after you've done so, somebody has to make these decisions. You can choose not to be involved in public life and the controversies of that sort, and condemn others for being insensitive. But here you are. One of the joys of serving in public life is that you believe you can make a constructive difference, that you really can make a huge change in the lives of other people, and that will be better for all of us and for the earth that God has given us. The other side of the coin is that you have to make decisions, and they are likely to be recorded decisions, not private ones, yes or no, that history will indicate this is where he stood, this is what he said, or he didn't say, or ducked the issue, or wasn't there, and so forth. That's probably an important discipline before God, that you have to stand up and be counted. I've been involved in a worldwide fight against hunger. This involves trade practices. It involves the kinds of seed and fertilizer that might work. It involves especially markets for farmers and their ability really to support themselves and their families. And it really comes to the guardianship of the earth, which is another important part of the Methodist Creed, that God created this earth. We are on it for a period of time to utilize it, to try to serve, to try to grow in our own faith with all the resources that God has given us. But we have an obligation to protect the earth, to protect that heritage for our children and for others that follow after us. I'm deeply concerned about the part of the Methodist Creed that deals with world peace and justice. Peace, first of all, and in this respect, we've been attempting to destroy weapons of mass destruction, to work with Russians, people in Ukraine and Belarus, Kazakhstan. And then as these materials spread, people in Albania and Yugoslavia and elsewhere, it's not that warfare in the past was less brutal, but weapons of mass destruction mean that people can be wiped out as whole societies. So it has been my mission, really informed by the Methodist Creed and this early upbringing, to try to work with other countries systematically to take care of each and every one of these weapons, to destroy them or to guard them or to convert them, so that in fact there is a possibility for some peace and stability. The Methodist Church can be an enormous and powerful source of current information. Each one of us may have gone to school at some point, through secondary school or college or so forth, but and then occasionally we find in reading material something that catches our eye. But a determined pastor and a very strong lay group can really bring us up to speed on what's happening in Kenya and Zimbabwe and what we might be able to do about it. And that's important, that kind of information and practical advice on how to act upon it. And then a strengthening of the will to do so comes from the discipline of regular attendance. The fact that as a congregation, this is not a casual affair for us. This is a very important part and discipline of our lives.
When the social creed speaks of peace, which I embrace, I am a pacifist. I believe that human animals can exist on this planet without killing each other. But as a legislator in a nation that organizes and maintains an army or a militia, as the Constitution says, every year I've got to vote on a budget for the Defense Department. I've got to vote to fund the military of the United States of America, the world's only superpower. And so I've got to be honest. That is always the time when I get a lump in my throat when I put my voting card in the back of the seat. Because, I would love to be able to say to the people who vote to send me to Washington to represent them that, look, we don't need an army. But I have to remember as a legislator that when I ran for office, I did not run as a Methodist or a member of the United Methodist clergy. Had I done so, I may or may not have won the seat. But I can have the internal struggle without trying to trespass, in other words, move my narrow theological orthodoxy onto public policy. So I do vote for the defense budget. We all come to Congress with things that are on our inside that we don't necessarily espouse, but they shape and mold us, they direct us. And so when the children's health care bill comes up for a vote, it is my theological background that says, Cleaver, you've got to support this. Now, I don't stand up on the floor and say, well, I'd like to read number 4 in the Methodist Social Principles. I don't do that. But there's no question about it, make no mistake. Those things are influencing me secondarily, and I think primarily I'm influenced by the Gospels. But I don't have to stand around and say that. I don't have to go around and try to, as Jesus said, stand on the street corners and pray so that men will hear my prayers and become pharisaical, you know. And I think we've had too much of that here in Congress. And I think now people are going to go to the corner or go into their closets and pray to their Father who is in heaven. You know, I'd rather get my reward later, as Jesus says, than get the praise of people who say, boy, Cleaver's really religious. You see him standing over there by the voting machine praying. We've come to a very meek moment. At least we've had a meek moment over the last 15 years or so in the church. We've been overpowered by the televangelists and the radio preachers, and we become intimidated and silent. And if you look back in the history, that's what we've done over the past 25 years or so is antithetical to what John Wesley did and the great preachers of our tradition. But to some degree, because we do have a Washington office, it provides us with a chance to provide guidance for the church. You know, the church must be the headlights rather than the tail lights. And I think we've been the tail light much too often. But the fact that we have an office right next door to the United States Supreme Court and right across the street from the House of Representatives provides us, I think, with a unique opportunity to disseminate information around the country about the major issues coming up before us. And people in the church need to, first of all, be registered to vote. I think if Moses redid the 10 Commandments, it would say, thou shalt not place oneself in a politically impotent position, meaning that we must vote. And because I think it is a sin not to vote, because it means that one has extricated him or herself from the realities going around them. And there are some positions that are clearly theological that we've got to address. I even think, for example, Social Security is a theological issue. I mean, we as believers must make sure that people are able to enjoy their sunset years. Contrary to the worship of youthfulness today in the Bible, the elders were the ones who had the wisdom and the ones that received the love and appreciation. And Jesus, on more than one occasion, commanded that we take care of the widows. You know, the most beautiful part of our social principles and creed is that it ends by saying that we believe that God and His will are going to eventually triumph. We believe that God's will be done. We know that ultimately we're going to have peace. We know that ultimately war will be eliminated. We know that ultimately we're going to have a nation where children are protected. And we know that ultimately we're going to have a world where people are not battered and beaten and bludgeoned because of their skin color. We know that. And the only question is what role we will play